Okay, another edition of Esoteric Book Club. We are reading Alan Moore's Illuminations. We are on the second and third story. We're talking about Not Even Legend and Location, Location, Location. So, yeah, Not Even Legend. I'm glad we're doing these two stories together. Like, that makes a lot of sense. I really enjoyed it. I feel like it was like a fun take on kind of something bizarre. Um, yeah, my it was just so fun. It was like a puzzle, or like it was like opening a present, kind of like it unfolded. The story unfolded really cool, and it was really cool to go back and read the italicized parts and then have that make sense. Um, and read it differently and decipher the scene of the whole evening. Um, it was cool. It reminded me of like a like film noir or like some type of like old 20s detective scene for some reason.
Very film noir.
Well,
Yeah.
like, yeah, like, because with like the narrator, like explaining his actions. From,
Like Twilight Zone-y.
yeah,
Very like PI vibes. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
So Cody, what did you think?
yeah. I liked it too. I like both stories were quite entertaining. Um, yeah, and think some really interesting themes that I think we can discuss. And yeah, Alan Moore just has a real knack for making like stories that kind of bend your mind a little bit and but still remain coherent, like still have like they're not like they don't leave you with like plot questions or anything. Like they don't leave you with any that for the first story, I mean the first story we read, um
Oh yeah.
what was it called?
Uh
That I think that one was a little more cryptic, but it was still fairly clear. Like the plot was clear, but like the meaning was like hidden. And I think that's good too, because that I think that was kind of part of it as well. It's like things that you can't explain, um, but like I feel like a lot of esoteric writers of fiction can leave things really vague,
hmm.
like so vague that it's like frustratingly like your mind can't grip anything like really dreamlike where like nothing really the plot doesn't cohere, but Alan Moore of course can like write a good story, and that's what with a good plot that like carries you along while bending your mind, like he hits a really sweet spot with that, and I really like that.
That's a good point. Let me know if the background noise is coming through. I think my family's like yelling downstairs. If you can't hear it, then that's good. But
Yeah.
what is going on down there? Um, cool. Yeah, Britannia, what was your impression of the first story or the first two? I don't know.
I love his writing. I love his style. I love his characterization. I think there's like an odd dissonance or disassociation that like happens with like his characters where it's like the suspended belief, like that's happening to them is like a really fun thing to like experience as a reader with his style of writing. So that's cool. Um yeah, I like the plots. I think the second one, the third chapter, the second story that we read that we're going to be talking about was so trippy and bizarre, but so funny and like, I don't know, the way he wrote it was pretty cool. And I think that his perspective of like a lot of things that he alludes to with the answers of Jesus were really um more grounded into like modern day like interpretations and reality that I really enjoyed that bridging of the like ancient text parables with the like answers of the Jesus. So that was fun. Yeah, his writing's amazing. I really enjoy it. I love his work though. I'm kind of like I'm impartial to like the dystopian take on things because I think it's more raw and real and like underbelly and like kind of assumes a more realistic version of what's going to happen, of like, you know, cautionary tale vibes, like, hey, it's like, you know, we keep repressing, like for the first story, if we keep repressing information and stuff, this is how people get silenced on like all levels. And, you know, in the second story, it's definitely like speaking to like a modern perception of, you know, this that whole story was such a trip. It was fun to read. Yeah. So anyways, yeah, that's my take.
Yeah, I think you mentioned the humor. I really appreciate that in these stories too. Is like some really nice humor, good chuckles for sure.
Yeah, the characterization becomes part of the humor. Like you're laughing at the characterization of these people. Like the description of the in the first story that I get the meeting when they're going around and each person's like take or like response to the other person in the room, and you're kind of trying to follow it and you're like getting to know these people, and then all of a sudden you realize it doesn't matter. You're like,
Yeah.
so funny. Like it's kind of like when you know, sometimes like when you go out or something like that, you'll have like all these like conversations or feelings or interactions with people and like your responses to the interactions and all that. And then like on the car ride home, you realize like, oh no, that mattered.
Yeah. Yeah,
But it's like,
all their like dissonant perspectives and like and and motives, each of the characters, and how like and even like all of them seeing the whatever the creature, what's the creature, as
for the sake
something
of
different. Like
Two of
that's
them,
what I was really,
yeah.
yeah.
so
But
they're
it's
all like,
such a real thing about press freedom and what's happening to journalists all over the world.
oh
And
Ah,
and it's also like a total social commentary on like conspiracy theory and like how like they like, you know, shadow governments usually like silence the conspiracies that are tend to be more on the nose about things that are actually happening. Like, so you don't hear about like the Pizzagate or like those pedophile islands and shit anymore when you're like, you know, that shit's still happening. And no,
wow, yeah, I that's cool that I didn't make that connection, but that totally is a connection in that
yeah,
story. That's like, I think he really meant it that way too, now
yeah.
that you say it.
Silencing the press is definitely like I
I
think
don't, I feel like it was a really good time of life to read this story. 'Cause it was like funny, but it was like a modern take, like for real. It was definitely like this stuff's happening around us right now.
And it was even like post COVID.
Yeah, like when
Well, it's pre-COVID to the Whispering Pete though, right? So the Whispering Pete, he's already experienced COVID
Oh yeah.
because he's going backwards.
But I do think you're right. I think it was
So
like
these people,
2017,
these people are like pre-COVID having their
2016.
meetings.
Oh
So
no,
it's
wait,
like that's an
3 years
interesting
ago
thing.
now. 2000s in 2016. So 16, 17, 18, 19. So it's 2019.
So yeah, that's interesting. But he meant, I like that he mentions COVID, that's part of it too, and that I think that lends credence to your theory, Britannia.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
That's a
and
good
it's
one.
funny because it's like it's interesting because I think there are like, I don't know, not like people like that work backwards, but I think there's like situations that are like kind of not more or less not like orchestrated, but they're pretty sure things are going to happen, and they like work backwards from those things too. Like a lot of like, you know, bigger powers, I feel like, you know, it's pretty obvious to see an outbreak happening before it happens because you're like watching it happen, you know, with hospital stats and stuff. Like there's people watching that shit, but they don't, there's people to know. There's like first, quote unquote, first people to know, and like, you know, those people have to like try to like race against time to like do anything they can to like try and curb something that they know is coming, that's gonna happen. And like, you know, a lot of the doctors like could tell things were gonna get a little hairy there for a second, and like the nurses and stuff, you know. It's just like there's people above that are like, you know, knowing those things. And I don't know, I
Right.
think it's very interesting, like the way the communication between like different people is, or different types of whatever energies is. Because like just even the relationships between the Whispering Pete's and like all the other different types of things and how they don't really like associate and they all try to keep each other like, on the down low and all that. I think it's like interesting to know there's little like pockets of people that are like that too.
Yeah, what do you think of that? Like these creatures that continually remain unknown despite people's
They're all
best
metaphors
efforts to
for
know.
different types of people and their functions in the system and societies. I really think that those are like that
On
is
one
like pointing to
level,
specific types of people.
I think on one level that's the case, but on another level, it's actually saying that there's like some things that we will never know, and that our perception of what we think we can know, like this paranormal study group, they think they have like they're studying ghosts and like things that are like already in the mythos and like trying to
Yeah.
find it. But when this guy even says an inkling, one of them even has an inkling of exploring that which isn't
Isn't
already
known.
known,
Yeah.
that's when they step in,
That's when the chopping block
ultimately.
comes down. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, completely. 1,000%.
I
yeah.
agree. I mean, I think that people have powers that they keep to themselves. And I think right now, I mean, status quo where we're at is probably that it's out of fear of, persecution or like being, I mean, I don't think, I don't, who knows? I don't personally believe there's a lot of like underground organization stuff going on between
I
people
mean,
that might have like powers, you know?
gangs are like
Just
that. And then they have like shaman wars and like gang wars. Like those are two different types of those kinds of examples right
yeah,
there. Like real power, like actual
yeah.
like fear and like darker things, like not like of this world power. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I would say like people that can read people's mind or like people that can move objects or like,
They have that in China, at
yeah,
least documented.
for sure. I mean, I do. So this is a US based thing. I mean, yeah, because I don't know. I mean,
I
you
think I don't know. I've been listening to a lot of like what magic is this or whatever, and like the history in that podcast is amazing because it shows you like the lore of magic goes back and was like secret for so long because of the persecution of knowledge and the destruction of it when other people came into power. So like a lot of these like groups had to go under guises that kind of worked with like the new regimes that they had to like incorporate just to be
okay,
able to continue operating and stuff. So it's like really interesting how like shuffled and like under the rug things get.
maybe. I mean, maybe some of these groups that pose as like, yeah, gang wars or things like that would be associated to trying to hide secrets of, you know, some sort of capabilities of others. I mean,
I
yeah,
mean, just even like you using humans as like currency and doing like human trafficking type vibes is like definitely like an energy moving thing that's like something you can't really put a quantifiable thing on. You can't be like this many lives, it's like, oh no, those people had people they were connected to and like, those people get put into other people's lives. So who's like ordering these people, and then it goes up and down the chain.
And then yeah, these people have a lot of power to remain hidden too. And that's
Yeah,
really
they
the
have
scary
to.
thing about it. Yeah.
Why it's
yeah.
called the dark web, not the light
Yeah.
web.
I mean, I wouldn't think that, okay, you can get, I mean, everybody has capabilities of, you know, extra human capabilities. If you work on it really hard, like you can do certain things. Like I agree to that. I do think, however, people like can be born with certain capabilities. I do think it would be passed down from families. So maybe you could see some of that in like family, gang history. But I feel like it would also be kind of like genetic anomalies that would be like hidden in plain sight that those are the people that I'm more talking about. Like I agree
Oh
with
yeah, no,
you. I
I
think
agree
you're
there's
right.
both.
But then it's like if you were just born into a family that don't have powers, but then all of a sudden you're fucking like moving shit with your mind, like it would be like kind of scary to be like to go to talk to anybody about that, you know? And then if you did meet
Yeah,
somebody
so
else, it
it's
would be like
your
a
government.
random, like kind of like the Whispering Pete's, how they don't really, you know, they don't really tell, like the three groups don't really talk about each other. I mean, you know, I guess he had a wife eventually, but
His wife was another Whispering Pete, though.
yeah. And their kid was too,
Yeah.
which is cool.
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't suggest that they had like this
Writing, but also like you're like,
Ah,
I want to go into that world more.
It doesn't
what?
suggest what? What? Oh.
That they have like an organized like group necessarily.
Yeah.
But like who ordered him to kill this group? Did they ever say that?
Or nobody ordered him. He just knew about it, so it was like he had to do it. He did it
Uh,
himself because he knew about it from his own diary.
okay.
And
Yeah.
it's like that's all it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think that's trippy because it's like this retro causal thing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just like wouldn't and it's like kind of an inevitability in that case because there's no if they don't even ever know about it. But he knows because he's working backwards.
Yeah.
It's like there's nothing anybody can do about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he
That's
doesn't
what
need a
I think is
group. He doesn't
interesting.
need a big
Yeah.
organization or group to get
Yeah.
it. Get it.
Well, I think that shows like the power of the individual, but it also is interesting on like the time and fate type vibes too. There's like multiple levels of like questions that pop up, when you encounter that story in
Yeah.
like that, like told in that way. Because like at first you're like really confused by the italics and you're like, oh, I gotta reread that and think, did I miss something? And then you go back and you're like, I didn't miss anything. And you keep going in the story and then you're like, oh, I get it.
Yeah. And the little thing. What do you think of like the little things? What was it like what is
There
the
were
very
three.
first line of that story?
In my
What is it?
experience, if a junkie is involved,
Yeah,
it usually gets put down to a mains explosion.
yeah, the Jilky. Like he mentions that what is it the Jilky feeds off of that he says? I thought that was kind
Oh,
of interesting.
like praise. It was like so they constantly praise you, or was that the other one? No, that was the other one.
Yeah, the other one. Yeah, right. The other one like feeds off of like
Your
your like
energy from your
melancholy. Like it feeds off of like your depression, so it leaves you only with excitedness. I love
Right?
that.
I
Yeah.
know.
But the Jilky like feeds off of like some kind of neurochemical or something. I
Oh,
forget.
really?
Yeah, it was like your serotonin,
Yeah.
right? No.
Or like
See, I thought that's what the other one was because they would like hype you up, like,
the
oh,
other one, yeah.
and you'd feel so good, and then you'd leave and you'd feel like drained, like just like, dear God, you know?
Well, I don't know if it says you feel drained after that. I think
No.
it just is like you're just psyched because it feeds off of that being drained. So you're just like psyched for a while. Everybody likes these things.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You did say that. I know. Shoot, what are they called? Anyway.
But like, what is that? Like the Jilky is
Yeah,
essential in
that.
this because the Jilky is what like he brings. I think it's like he has to bring the Jilky to this place, and the Jilky is what
Tourmalines.
ultimately like blows him up. It's what like can cause the explosion or something.
Because they're fuzzy in your
Yeah.
So
mind.
the whispering Pete is the one that's like addicted to sex and like the emotional life.
Well, that's the
And then
backwards working one too.
yeah, and then I'm trying to get to the part where they meet
The
that
Mormon,
lady that
the
they're like
Mormon.
super, yeah.
Mormalines are the energy vampires, though, but leave you feeling good, right? So
Yeah.
Yeah.
bit of an energy vampire.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like a
they're the
reverse
Morlings are like
Reverse.
energy vampire. Yeah.
But then I think there's just the Jill keys are just like a glitch. Like that's what I saw it as, is like an anomaly of like matter that you can't tell what it is and you don't pay attention to it, but it's just a little off. And it looks like something that's supposed to be there at first, but then it's like, because right, everybody was like, isn't like, oh, Carl's next to some rug or
Yeah.
something. Like, oh, he must have brought his laundry in. Like there's
Yeah.
a bunch of people
But
have
yeah.
different.
his new
So fifth
like headphones or speaker system that he must be showing off.
Yeah.
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 It was like each person had a different view
Yeah.
of like what he was bringing in. Because I don't think it's like a, is it like a person? It seems like more like an animal or like like something that
It's a
wasn't like a rock, but like maybe a plant or something.
well, see, even you're trying to make something of it.
Oh man, it's
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah. It's not,
It's happening right now. Yeah.
but I like that's one of the themes I think throughout this book so far is like things that we can't comprehend. Like that our minds make shit up to
Hmm.
comprehend it. Like all the information of everything is like, of course, like for our own survival. And he mentions that specifically for our own survival, we filter out so much information we interpret by our, by our makeup overall. So that's like, I think that's a really cool theme in the whole that he explores in interesting ways. And
Yeah.
of course, it's one that like I'm familiar with, and I've read a lot of stuff that does do that.
Hmm.
But I think he has some cool, fresh ways of doing that
They're
and
like
giving us,
creative and still mysterious, you know, like his writing has like a hint of magic because of like the way it leaves things like solid in like an intangible way where you kind of wrap your mind around an intangible idea, but then like you can't really like explain or pin it down still. You know, it's like open ended, even though you can understand it. Which I think is like the whole point of like clearing the lens, as Roderick would say, and like having that experience with others, like being able to do that. It's like he's coaching you through doing that by like telling stories and like exercising your brain towards being able to do that, which I think is really magical.
Yeah.
yeah, I think you're right. And he's kind of stepping you through it in a way that's like kind of clear too. Like makes statements like we filter our data. He specifically says that,
Hmm.
you know.
Like the worlds that he create are very solid and the concepts within them are very nebulous
Yeah.
but in like a very tangible way.
Hmm.
Like the examples he gives are like, you know, the stories themselves. So you know exactly what he's talking about, what they look and sound and feel like when you encounter them.
Yeah. Yeah, and like the first story kind of is about like the abyss and the unknowns that might come out of it. The third story had a little bit of
I
that
think it's
too with
like
the
the
box.
influence of the unknown. I
He
think that the
brings
first story
the
is a lot of like cautionary influence of the unknown too. To like be careful what you play with type vibes too. Like what you invite in and what you encounter is like gonna
yeah,
become a part of you as long as like as far as you let it.
yeah. And then the third
Sorry.
story, then this
We
third
can
story
transition.
just like really going wild with that. Like here's this like sudden battle of the end times and
Dude, the angel corpses falling like during the battle, like
yeah.
while they were like hooking up, that shit was like so intense. I was like, oh my God.
And they have sex while it's happening.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's just such a
That's such, that was so well written too.
Yeah.
Well, of course they are, just
that's a
He's
very
having
human thing
sex
to
with
do. Like,
Jesus while the angels and demons battle.
well, and that's a metaphor too, though, because it's like she's the human, and he's like, you know, so she kind of represents like the evils or whatever, like what basically what they're fighting over in a lot of ways. And then like, Jesus is supposed to be like the angels, right? But he's fallen and he's like on earth and he's like all chill and like smoking and
I mean,
Yeah.
I
like
didn't read
asking
it like that. I read it more
I
like
don't
he
know.
was half and half, and that this was like a
Yeah.
scrap of the planet, but they needed to keep one representative just to like for insurance purposes, and like, and it was
Yeah,
like,
but
Well,
what's that purpose? Like, you know what I mean? Like what was her, like I get like the transactional purpose in an odd way, but like I don't really get like her like as an individual. She like randomly won out of the lottery as like the most like generic one, most generic human, or like you know what I mean? Like
I think part of it, I think it's beyond our comprehension that like why was she chosen? Like who knows? It's like that's part of it is like this is like this transaction and the way he describes it is in what's interesting is he's describing it in like legal in like transactional like business terms, this kind of modern way that and in a way that her specifically as a solicitor
yeah.
would get to, which is interesting. So in a sense he's like playing to her and that's but that what's her role in this like thing that's beyond her comprehension that's only can only be filtered in this way by her specifically at this time.
I mean, I think that was part of it was they just like in my impression they just she's a lawyer, right? Like she wasn't the real estate person. She was I was confused on whether she was the real estate person at first, but then she's a lawyer overseeing the like this transaction that's going on is like what she was assigned to, it seems,
Right.
right? And I think they just picked a lawyer was really like because it seemed like Jesus had no kind of like, I mean, yeah, he knew everything, but he was also like had no rhyme or reason for certain things a little bit. Like it was just like, I'm just appearing how, probabilistically you'd see me. And like, but I don't know, like I didn't really choose this, like
Yeah.
it's more just like a mathematical equation of what I'm supposed to be, And I think that's
Yeah,
kind of
he's
like,
playing a role and she is too.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was kind of the point was like, you're a female lawyer, come on in, like, and she's like, what did I do? Like, she even asked that question, like, oh, I must be
well,
going to
I
hell
think
because of, you know,
well, yeah, I mean, I don't know, because you know how it's like there's the Adam and the Eve type vibes, like, but it's not quite that. It's like almost like Eve and the tree of knowledge almost. Like, I don't know. I was wondering why a woman too.
Yeah. There's a lot of symbolism in this one. I think there's a lot of occult stuff that like it has the harlot, it has the like she's like the one riding the dragon, the multi-headed dragon. That's the lust card of the tarot.
I picked up
It's
on
like it totally was. It was like holding the chalice and it's Babylon um in like the Thelemic tradition, right?
well, and that's like, I
Um
think that's a Revelations thing too, was that there's
yeah.
a woman on the beast, on the dragon that's red that brings about, like, it's an end times like thing. I mean, a lot of it is, but
It's
Yeah.
Revelations, yeah.
Yeah. But see, Jesus, they're like this battle is going on, and Jesus is just like taking aside this like solicitor and having sex with her and like giving her this experience and like this transformative experience. And he's like he's and like you can see like when they start having sex and she disrobes, she she takes off her shirt and but she closes the curtains because she doesn't want to see them to see her naked. But then when she leaves the house, she leaves the house completely
Naked.
naked.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
And then she goes back into the quote
shed,
unquote garden.
yeah, and she goes into the garden and like that's it for that's she's like in the garden now. So she's like becoming the new Eve for the new
Oh.
creation or something,
Yeah,
the
but
creation of the new order after like while this battle has happened as part of the and it's like that's necessary too. And Babylon stands triumphant. So it's like this maybe it's a new order of like Babylon triumphant or something, and this whole scene was like part of that as well. And like, and it's like transforming like a part of humanity that's like maybe they're like most the solicitor who like is slippery and makes makes arguments, the lawyer, transforming the kind of like maybe smarmy lawyer into like the new Eve.
Gosh, really good. Yeah, I think you're right.
But there's like that impurity there, and like the fact that she like did, like that, I don't know, she moves in across the street. I don't know. There's a lot
Well,
like,
well,
yeah,
that's
there,
part of
because
it's
like
not.
I even wondered if like that garden that's starting to bloom was because like they had unprotected sex, and like she was going to be pregnant or something, and like that was
All
like
right.
the
I mean, he said he was sterile, but maybe he lied.
he said he was like a mule, but I don't
I mean,
know.
I think she's like she'll find Adam or something, or maybe like ultimately it will she will be pregnant. But I think the harlot is like it is the impurity. It's like, well, and it's like it's flipping the script of like the pure puritanical Christianity to like it's just like Thelema does, just like Crowley,
Mhm.
and like the harlot is like pure in her impurity. It's like there's
Mhm.
like it's like this energy of it of lust of like transcendent lust, in the
Well,
lust card, right? And
embodying
like,
what's natural for you, whatever.
yeah, and it's the fullness of like of experience, it's like embracing all the spirits, the seven-headed dragon, like all the parts of ourselves, and like, yeah.
Well, and that whole visual contract and like the whole like language thing, how like that was their way of like having the contract was in the sky with like those different
With the
beings
creatures.
and animals and the creatures and yeah, the weird like scary things that were like, and he's like, "Oh, don't be worried about those. Like that's, that's a language, like that's the language,
I love how it was written
translation."
like a few pages in. Like it's like you got pretty deep into like the touring of the house before anything really weird started happening, which I thought was really cool. And then it just got like weirder and weirder, like immediately after that, right? Because the first thing that we see, I mean, the whole beginning was kind of peculiar for me. Like, okay, what's actually going on here? Like, and then it was like once the like, locust, bull dragon or whatever,
The giant locust
scorpion, right?
with the scorpion tail,
Yeah. and like spider talons, it seemed like little hands.
the
So like
pinchers, yeah.
like it just had such an image, and I was just like I like started laughing, when I read it, and I'm like, oh, here we go, like just the way you kind of like wrote it to be like that, was really cool.
And what does the house represent then? It is kind of a safe place for her and him to be in the midst of
Usually
this.
Usually houses and dreams, I mean, I just know dream interpretation is like your body. So the different rooms of the house are different locations of the body. So you can also like, I mean, when I did a meditation for our circle, it was doing the tree of life with images of, you being in a room and you're working on that Sephirah in that room, which I don't know.
Oh,
So maybe it's like you're
Mm.
saying, like a transformational kind of journey that she's on of discovery of herself and the fears that reside in each part of herself that she's facing, maybe, or that humanity's
I
facing
like
in each room.
I like that.
I'd have to reread it to see if that's accurate, but
Yeah, and that like thinking backwards, like they're in the kitchen and they eat this wonderful feast, that's like satiating the stomach, and they're in the bedroom having sex, and it's like this great sex. And
mm,
by the way, I like that little bit about like it was great. It's the best sex I've ever had, but I was expecting something more,
yeah.
It's like that, like and she even like makes the realization, my socialize my I've been trained by modern media to expect more.
Yeah, totally. I know. It's gnarly.
And
That's
yet I think it still transforms her, it still is like, and she doesn't realize it. She doesn't even realize it. She's like shedding, something in that moment.
yeah.
Well, and like her just like slowly getting used to like the chaos of like the higher beings around her too, where it goes from just like a few creatures to like this whole like battle saga of like raining down like on them like completely like
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a cool story. It
What
was
had you heard of what Joanna, what was, I'm trying to find the name. Joanna Southcott, the one that they were talking about with the box.
I think it's
yeah.
fiction.
You'd think so?
What about you,
Never heard of
Bertani?
her.
Have you heard of her?
Well, but the whole Schrodinger thing I liked about that too, and then just
Yeah.
like the whole like reason why like the house was maintained.
Yeah.
I didn't know if that was like him, like, Alan, or, what I was just about to call it, what's his name? Alan
His
Moore.
worlds are
Alan
so
Moore.
believable that you can believe the character exists.
Yeah, that's probably it. But I mean, it does sound like it sounds familiar, which is also like, I mean, that name sounds familiar, but that's like very like that would make sense too for just an Edwardian era name, type of thing. Or
Well, there were a lot of secret women's societies, and there still are, and I think that's cool because like women have always had a need for it, whereas like I don't think men necessarily have, which inherently makes me feel like they're doing nefarious things instead of positive things. Where I feel like most women coming together to try and control their husbands for societal benefit would usually be doing it to like benefit like the women's suffrage and like equal rights type vibes.
Yeah, that's a huge theme in this. The women's liberation thing
Yeah.
with like, yeah, these women getting away from like it even mentions that many times, right? They're like they've gotten away from the um the really oh yeah, the Handmaid's Tale reference.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
Totally. That's like a bit, the big
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. Huge. Yeah. I was like, ooh, got me on that one because the books are amazing. The TV show is amazing. Like, I'm
Yeah.
super, like, I don't know. I have like a weird take on feminism because I am a feminist, but I do it in like I have like a very, like, I know it sounds awkward, but like righteous way. I feel like in doing it where like I understand like what it takes to like get to things, but without stepping on other people. And I think that that movement has done a really good job of that. Because if anything, it's always grabbed the hand of the causes around it and lifted those with it. I think it's like a profound juxtaposition of most interactions with causes that usually clash.
yeah. Intersectionality is just such a huge part of modern day feminism that I
Yeah.
definitely agree with what you're saying. And like, yeah, it should, if your movement is like disenfranchising folks, then that's like not the point of having like a movement like that. I mean, just inherently, I know it's like some extremists get to that when it gets certain ways, but I mean,
Well, it's when you think your idea is the right way versus like the divine right way is the right way. And I think people guise those things opposite, where it's like the things that I feel like are the most righteous are the ones that are perceived as the most grassroots, whereas like the ones that are more like organized and like, for lack of a better phrase, religious, like organized religion is I would say a good example of it, where it's like they say they're doing one thing, but they're really doing another.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm interested. I mean, I'm personally interested to see. I mean, you're probably right. Joanna Southcott was probably not a real person, but I'm
Well,
also,
he throws
if
in
something like
he
this
throws in
actually,
like
you know,
doesn't he go back to like Nebuchadnezzar though too? And Nebuchadnezzar was real. So like when he was talking about
that's
like
the thing. His other references are very like kind of real, So that's also like I mean, and there's a lot about like magic history that I don't know about. And this person would probably fall under the category of like a John Dee type of character of that era that just
I
isn't
mean,
talking,
how many women in
you know?
history have you heard like in the magic history books? Like, I mean, it seems to me like it was even said that most histories are like written by males and written by the victor. So like he was saying like this the truth is squashed down. Was he like saying that?
I mean, true. And like I think that
Yeah.
were they talking about that here?
Yeah, and when he's talking about how like victory is like written by
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
victor and how like all the other truths get like pushed under the rug.
It makes me think it's a real person with a real story. Like, I don't know. I gotta look it up, but
And it's cool because they like in this she played that cult played a role in this like redemption of, you know, of woman or of the world itself, like refleshing or like getting. I feel like there's a simplicity, like a like an open simplicity to what it like reaches with all the chaos, and then it's like, just Eden, like,
she's a
you
real
know, like
person.
just being naked and not fearing the like terrifying things around. Just like here they are. They're just like illusions splashing, but like, and the Eden is too, and everything is just kind of, it's just kind of like brings to this open simplicity that's like beyond like all the struggle and like, and it's like, and the consent, even like the consent in the bedroom that they have, just like this really simple consent, like, and he asks and she is like, yeah, it's like really, and it's like the
And
sex
it's
is like
awkward and fun.
really
Mm.
mindful and open and beautiful, and it's like not like, it doesn't like tug at any of her like strings of like of what she of expectations. It's just like solidly, it's like not beyond, it's not transcendent, it's just like solidly rooted and like, and just good. I thought that was, yeah, that's, so it's kind of, it is that kind of like, it's because and then it just like it makes the worldly like actually pure, like that which has been like deemed impure by the Christian church and like that world.
It alchemizes it for
It's
sure.
like, yeah,
I mean, I like this as from the lens that we're talking about now, which is like a return to the garden kind of story, but an ending that makes actual sense for like where we've been. I mean, not, I mean, literally, maybe not so much, but like it, alchemization process, like, makes sense for like what we've gone through as in humanity and like what kind of, yeah, reformation needs to happen from the Puritan movements that were created to disenfranchise. Yeah, I mean, specifically females in this story, but like a lot of folks, like even like him commenting on the content of the library, and how that was right. Like there wasn't diversity in the authors. Like that's really, I mean, if the library would be like the mind or the thought, then yeah, I mean, the world, and maybe that's the symbolism of her going and him being like, the garden's over there. Like, this isn't the garden right here. Because she like, well, aren't we in the garden right now? Is this like where the garden was? And he's like, no, it's over there. Like, it's more like, this is the old stuff that like needs to be changed. Like, go over there and like, you'll have a better time, Like, that's actually what it's all like, the raw truth of it. And like, maybe
And she
that,
doesn't see it until she's stripped away of all that when she leaves the house and she goes over there, then she gets admitted and then she like starts to see it and
mm,
experience it. But it's also like a full circle of humanity too, where
mm,
it's like the end of days will like end and like a garden will be on the other side of it.
mm. Yeah. And it will change you. Like, you will have a different perspective.
what do you
Yeah,
think
I like.
of like, go ahead, Brittany.
Oh, no, go for it. I have to head
What
out
do
in
you,
a second. That's what I was just gonna say. Sorry.
Oh, Joanna Southcott was a real person, and she was a
oh,
self-described religious prophetess from Devon, England. So
wow, cool.
yeah, so that's true.
We knew it.
I'll look her up.
Yeah, I know, because I mean that story's trippy. Like, is there a box?
Yeah.
where's the box?
What do you think of like his what it's like Jesus, like the books, he describes the books, he's like, oh, I'll probably replace them with a flat screen.
Yeah.
You know? Like
Yeah.
that's really interesting. Like the modern, it's this weird twist that I'm not quite, because it is like kind of, it's kind of dispelling this idea of like the purity of books over like video media and TV and stuff. But um so it even is like kind of dispelling even modern ideas of purity and like spiritual people and stuff. Like don't watch TV or like tainting your mind with these expectations. It's like no, it's like that, all that stuff is just, still just like noise in the mind, but you can still come back to the simplicity of the
Yeah.
simplicity.
Oh, I wish I could stay, but I have to head out for another meeting. But I love you guys, and I'm excited to watch the end of it.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
And we'll see you in 2 weeks.
See you in 2 weeks. We might want to meet next week. I don't know. We'll talk about it.
Yeah, I'm down to meet next week. Well, actually, I have another meeting at 7 next week as well.
Okay. So
But I could still do an hour.
maybe 2 weeks actually. Yeah. I don't know. I'll let you
Okay,
know if you, yeah.
no worries.
Okay,
All right,
cool.
love you guys.
Okay, bye. Love
Love you
you.
too.
Cool. What was the question?
Well, yeah, like what do you make of that? Like kind of his like she's going into the garden and he's like gonna hang out in this house and watch TV all day or something, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like again, if I mean, this is my, and probably didn't think about that question before when I was reading it, really, because I really didn't read like, yeah, you definitely like now I'm just thinking about this more like that, like a transformational journey. I would see him as like a representation of the old world too. Like he was born of Mary in that time, and like, yes, while he had like millennia before and after that, like I do think there was like a part of him that was like very much tied to like what the earth was in some regards and tainted kind of by it, like the rape of his mom, and how that always kind of like loomed over. And like that was something that he had a lot of like family trauma that he was like that was just like a part of who he was, and it wasn't really something like it couldn't be resolved by him like renewing things. And he was kind of like one foot in there, one foot out there. So I mean, maybe that's like more like a limbo thing that, you know,
Hmm,
and he needed to kind of occupy both. I don't know.
right. Yeah, and maybe that's like the kind of the programming God, like, oh, God begets him in order to like have a son that won't repeat the same mistakes he did or something, like
Mm,
by like maintaining like this distance or something,
mm,
this kind of, because in this God like getting inebriated off of people's prayer, and then like in his inebriation just like annihilating civilizations or whatever, like you know
so
like
gnarly.
causing, and like it's like a description of like God's evil, the like the way evil, it's like an explanation for like how evil could come to be, and like the equation, and like and begetting Jesus was like out of rape, and that's like again the harlot, the again the like the theme of the you know um
Painted woman kind of vibe.
yeah. Yeah, and like Jesus comes of that and is like, and then he partakes of both worlds, he's like in the world and experiences the suffering of the world.
Yeah.
Just like, the classic Jesus interpretation, while still having the transcendence,
Yeah.
still being man and God in one. So
Yeah.
yeah, so he kind of like ultimately is the redemption, as and it really does follow that story, the biblical story arc, but in like a much more modern and like oh, awake, if you will,
Yeah.
like woke even.
Oh.
Um, yeah, Alan Moore definitely has like that kind of liberal bias in a sense, but yeah,
But yeah, I mean, I think even like, I mean, it's interesting to read it as that when, after reading something like, the whatever, the Journey into Christian Hermetics, the Meditations on the Tarot, and like having it like this wouldn't fall in that category, but it's kind of like how we would describe, like more of how we were describing like DNA helixes and having things, come full circle and having heaven be on earth, and understanding the transcendence, the alchemy of your situation so that you can, change the world for the better. Like it doesn't need to be like this like Puritan, like direct up kind of path. And this does feel more like circular, more like fully. I mean, yeah, it ends with the annihilation of humanity, except for one person, but at the
but
same
they're
time,
all uploaded into the
yeah, they're
cloud.
all in the clouds, so
It's kind of like Nirvana. I love the humor. So good. Yeah.
I know. I love that she had a choice too. I thought that was really cool. Like
Yeah.
she chose not to, right? Because I mean, my initial
Yeah.
thought, like when she was making that choice, I was like, I mean, my response would be like, well, am I going to be alone? Like, what, like, aren't I going to get like lonely or bored or something, And I love that that's like not even a part of the equation, really. She was just like, I'm just going to go over here now. Like, who knows,
Yeah.
like my car's somewhere down there, forgot my keys. Like, it's just very like direct,
Yeah. Yeah.
and just without even having
And
to think about it.
she's an independent woman too. Like she's like, I'm gonna go over here. This looks cool, beautiful. I'm going here and I'll be next to this hot guy that I
Yeah,
can pop over and
watch some
shag
TV.
every once in a while.
I know, it was cute. It
Uh,
was
she
fun.
doesn't need anybody.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
did it. Then that's very, yeah, I guess that makes sense. That's very kind of lawyery, kind of contract attorney vibe, or whatever. Maybe.
But in the kind of like the beautiful sense too.
Yeah,
Like she is liberated and the world's liberated through her in a sense too, like because doesn't have to worry anymore. We don't have to fear all these demons of our imagination. It's like we can be be in the purity without even like thinking of impurity or purity. It just
yeah,
is,
yeah,
of the
yeah.
world.
I mean, this is definitely a story that I'd want to reread and have,
Yeah.
with the context a little bit more because I feel like a lot of the details I kind of missed out on. And then really like yeah, I guess like a good what do we think the box is? Like that's really like an interesting. I mean, I like where you took it and kind of put it as the abyss, Um
Well, yeah, like I mean, it is an echo of of the hypothetical lizard,
mhm,
totally.
totally is.
Um, and it's like that which is like it's the unknowable, unknowable, like a realm of possibility that's just like it's kind of becomes irrelevant. They kind of make it irrelevant too, in a sense, because they like what the whole like scenario that he comes up with, of like, what if it tells you to shoot me?
Yeah.
You know, and
Well,
that like,
what was it supposed
but
to do?
it does give her a choice. What's that?
Was it supposed to bring about the end of the world? Was that what was prophesized or like I forgot what the intention of the
It,
box was.
it was to I think it was a panacea. It was like meant as a total panacea,
What does that mean again?
like cure all.
A cure all? So like
Yeah,
so to stop the end of okay, yeah,
to
I think you're
cure everything, to cure evil, basically, to cure suffering, to cure.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So like, yeah, and it
That's
goes
interesting.
unopened, like,
Yeah.
but
I
we
mean,
don't know it, but we never know if it even actually exists. It's like this, like,
yeah, like it does, is there anything in that box?
yeah, is there a lizard in the
Yeah.
sphere?
Totally.
Yeah, but as a panacea, yeah,
I mean, yeah, I guess by the end of the story, you're like, that's not really the point because the point's to kind of like start anew. But yeah, would it be like if, yeah, if the box were open, it's like, if the box were open, would, there be no contract needed by that point, or would the end not need to happen type of deal, I guess would have been, that was the kind of crux in the story. So maybe that's, I mean, what I'm thinking now is that it represents maybe the hope of more puritanical ideas of like, we could save the world if only we did this, Um, or like, if only we, did X number of things, the world's not going to end. I mean, we have a lot of language like that right now going on. Um,
yeah,
and there's a fine line between like, yes, but, like in my book, like, and it's harder and harder to navigate, what is your responsibility versus society's responsibility versus what's naturally happening. Like, there's
yeah,
the lines get really blurred.
yeah,
So, I mean, maybe,
yeah. That's really well put.
thank you.
You're right. It's very difficult in this day and age to know what's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I like writers like Bio Akamalafe. Have you read any of his stuff?
No.
Oh man, he doesn't have any novel. I think he might have a novel or a book, but he's a blogger. He has a website,
Oh, cool.
and he writes a lot about what if we stopped trying to find solutions for everything, and like the latest quote was like, what why it was like part of it had to do with like why do we always have to why are we like trying to turn failure into success or like move forward, like using failure as like a stepping stone to like understanding success, like why can't things just fail,
Mm.
you know,
Yeah.
just things fall apart, the world breaks, like let's just sit with that, and not have any solutions for it, or not have to like, yeah.
Weasel
And
your
he
way
talks a
out.
lot about
Yeah.
like disability and like just letting just fall on your face flat on the ground and don't do anything, like this kind of like,
That's
it's not
interesting.
fatalistic, it's not like there's some like weird hope in it, it's really, I
Well,
don't know,
there's a
it's
deep
really interesting.
acceptance, it sounds like,
Yeah,
like, and if you do accept your environment around you, there's a lot more opportunity to find. I mean, not the point even isn't to find a different path, but obviously,
right,
I mean, if you are going to have any type of movement from there, you're going to be from a more grounded place. Like,
yeah,
if your days continue, then you can like be okay with that.
yeah.
Maybe a little.
And also it's like when we immediately start embracing like some tactic of fixing a problem, we're usually like drawing on something we can already know. And I think this actually maybe I'm getting like a sense that this relates to this book because we can only know what we've been kind of already told. So like this idea of finding you see it in coaches everywhere, like finding success and failure, like um and like you just follow the same fucking formula that's like not ever gonna actually do any. We already know that the formula doesn't work and we just keep following it because that's all we think we know.
Yeah.
But sometimes maybe just to let yourself like just fucking fail and then like just see what comes of it, from that point, like not just try to seek answers from things we already know, but like come up with new solutions, or it's not even, you're right, like not even solutions, but just like just get a different perspective, like
Perspective. That's a better
just
way to put it.
allowing, it's like allowing something else to happen, allowing the universe to play out in a different way than like trying to control it. Control seems to be the problem a lot
Yeah.
of, you know,
Yeah, these days, geez.
yeah.
I mean, good lessons though in that, because yeah, I mean, you feel, and how well do you navigate through the chaos is really like, I think that's a bit of your, failing, accepting kind of stance, is that when something does provide, a left hook for you or whatever that phrase is, like you can kind of accept it a little bit easier because you're like, oh, I'm already here, like what else are you gonna do?
Yeah.
You know. Um, but yeah, and yeah, I think context, and yeah, they were already at the end, so it was like a what's the point kind of vibe, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they're not they can't like do anything obvious. They're not doing anything obvious to change the world. They're just following their own little desires, like exploring the body of the house,
Mhm.
the beautiful house, this like and like
It seemed
and
like they had met
exploring each
before.
other.
This was their second meeting, it sounded like, right?
No,
No.
because remember she shows up and that's the first she sees of him. He's like, I
Oh,
get this like
yeah,
hipster vibe from him, you
that's
know?
right. Because I thought she meant later mentioned like, oh, when we met in the past, you looked like this. Maybe he just changed throughout the. Maybe I read that wrong,
Well,
but
yeah, I mean, she kind of changes her like view on him a little bit. Like
totally,
her like initial impression gets like updated. She
totally,
just sees him a little more, just like all of us would with anybody we see.
yeah,
I think that's all it's explaining.
yeah.
Is her like,
I
oh,
mean,
he's actually kind of sexy. Oh yeah, okay. Like
yeah,
I didn't think
totally.
that before.
Yeah. I mean, she even said that in the beginning, like his face, like she knew he was attractive under there. It was like more like a weathered thing, is what like
Yeah.
she described him like initially, I think.
And
But
he
like,
is. He's like feeling. He like clearly is feeling the suffering of
yeah,
living. Yeah.
yeah. I hate that he was vaping because all I wanted to do was vape while I was reading, you know?
You should have.
I know.
That
Well, I
would have
did
been
for part of
appropriate
it,
for this.
but then I'm like in my meditation room for part of it. I don't vape in there. That's my rule. No vaping, no
Oh,
shit.
oh no, vaping and
So
meditation.
dang it. But
Oh man, I'm enjoying discussing this because I realize like there's more magic in this book than I had originally thought. He hides it well in a sense, under like this kind of funny story
yeah,
that on the surface is like, haha, cute, but like below it is like these themes,
yeah,
like pretty deep and like multi-dimensional and
yeah.
yeah, pretty
I
amazing.
mean, what a creative take on like a return to the garden kind of story. Like I can't, and like just as
Yeah.
an author to like be like, I really want to write like a return to the Garden of Eden story. Like this would be like a really successful take on like that, I would say. Like from Thelemites to Christian Hermeticists to any like, I mean, Western esoteric kind of path, you'd be like, this is a really creative take on that?
Yeah. And in like yeah, in like an entertaining story. That's it's cool. I don't know, I don't think I've come across any other writer that like can write a fantasy story that's like has such great occult themes, like really deep stuff, really connected to the tradition and like and actually like guiding your mind through this thing. It's like its own meditation, It's like a guided meditation.
I'm really
Like
grateful to be reading it.
no
Like
other
yeah.
fiction writer, I think, does that I've encountered.
When you've
Yeah.
encountered a lot, like that's
Yeah.
like you're definitely a
I've read
reader.
a lot. Yeah. I've read a lot of fantasy too. Yeah.
Cool.
You know who else actually has a couple of books that I've read that kind of do that? This guy John Fowles. That he wrote. There's one book about fairy. It's like a fairy tale kind of, but it's like about this one house and like in the English countryside, and this family that encounters fairies through time. Like really cool. I forget what it's called.
John
Um,
Fowles.
yeah, and his like so-called masterpiece is actually called
Oh,
the Magus, and it's about like a
Magus.
creepy cult. It's like about a creepy cult in
Ooh,
that's like uses kind of stage magic to like fool people in
interesting.
Greece, in like on a Greek island.
Yeah, I'm reading the little. It sounds interesting.
I'd reread that because I read it a long time ago, but I think he deals with like really cool occult themes in
Cool.
his books.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
In those two, anyways. I read the first one a long time ago while I was in Europe, so I don't remember it that well, but
No, I'm
I
very
liked it.
grateful for reading this. Like I've been like I've been telling people a lot like about the storylines and like how interesting it is and like yeah, it's very
Yeah.
refreshing to read something. It fits like Esoteric Book Club really well. So thank you again.
Yeah. I
Recommendation.
was kind of worried that it wasn't, but now that we're talking, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, it
Yeah.
works.
No, it
It's
definitely is.
weird because I at first I'm like, it's just a novel. I'm just like, man, these themes, whatever. But now that like talking about it like brings it, oh, yeah, yeah, these
Yeah,
connections.
shit. I mean,
Yeah,
the first, yeah. I mean, even the second one, like, I'm so glad Brittany said that. Like, I really didn't read it as like a hiding the truth and like the press kind of, thing.
yeah,
But I do think that's very relevant for like, and it's an important kind of read for like an esotericist, like in modern times. Like,
yeah,
just like, yeah, like expand your knowledge on like something that can be unknown as well as like information can be hidden and still actively is,
yeah.
is what I would get.
While also having the other angle of like telling us that all our perspectives are all like take into account other people's just think that everybody has these different perspectives and that like you don't know anybody really in that sense, but don't take yourself so seriously too. There's kind of a message on that. Like, and I think a lot of this actually, I think a lot of his stuff is that as well. Don't take yourself like that. The third story is like, don't take yourself. It's like it's all part of this divine thing that we have no idea what's really happening.
Yeah.
That's kind of the ultimate layer of it, like none of it really matters. It's all just drama.
Yeah.
Like,
That seems very Alan Moore. Like if I
yeah,
were, thinking of his vibe, it would kind of be like that, probably.
yeah,
I've never seen an interview with him or anything, but
I have. Yeah, he's good. Oh, he writes. What did I recently? Some somebody. Oh yeah, Frater Ocker actually quotes him but not even from one of his books, from an introduction to another book that he wrote. He that's I forget who wrote the book that it's talking. Oh yeah, he wrote an introduction to on a book about of not about but of Austin Osman Spare book,
oh,
and an edition on so he's quoting Alan Moore about Austin Spare. That's in goetic atavisms. Yeah.
okay. Are you reading that right now?
Yeah, it's
Cool.
amazing.
Is it
Yeah, I
amazing?
really like I really like the Craig Slee stuff too. Like he's rad.
Okay.
Yeah, he's like it's real he writes like a really poetic way that like um that's like very hard to grasp, and he even
Mhm.
like even says that like don't like your failure to grasp what I'm saying is a good thing. Like don't worry about it. Like that kind of thing.
Cool.
It's kind of fun. Like
You
yeah,
said
he's good.
Craig, what's
Craig
his name?
Slee.
Craig.
Craig Slee.
Okay.
Yeah, it's written like he has one side back to front, and Rocker has one side back to front.
I remember you saying that. Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
it's really cool,
Nice.
and it's just like it's about like encountering other, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
what I've been working
And they
on.
both have like really cool perspectives on it.
Nice.
Craigsley is very different in his
Nice. I'm gonna stop the recording.
anyway. Yeah.
Any final things on the last two stories? I don't know.
What about a quote? You have a quote?
Oh, geez, I didn't even think of it. Um, let me think. I don't know. I'm trying to think of a part of this.
I kind of like the last quote, and I think it's like a bit cryptic for like the meaning, but it's fun. The very at the very end, I'll read the last paragraph.
Okay.
Well, the last two paragraphs, but the second one is just one sentence.
Oh, totally.
Angie barely noticed she'd acquired a retinue of iridescent turquoise dragonflies that hovered in formation at her brow, a shimmering seven-pointed diadem. Strolling unhurriedly between the fruiting trees, she used her tongue to dislodge a recalcitrant fiber of sea bass from her front teeth, noting as she did so the persistent tang of her recent fish dinner flavoring her mouth. It was a pity that her client hadn't thought to offer her dessert, some sweet indulgence that would cleanse her palate and allow her to more thoroughly appreciate the tastes and perfumes of her Castle Road Arcadia. The final woman, then, there in the garden, faintly peckish.
That is it's kind of fucked up, right?
Yeah,
What more do you want, lady?
it's like she's not this whole like not quite never quite satisfied thing that like maintains.
Yeah,
She
that's
has everything now. She can't fully appreciate the garden.
that's a good lesson in and of itself, is kind of a lesson in presence and like, yeah, gratefulness. I don't know. I mean, what are your vibes from that?
Yeah, I mean maybe it's like that craving is okay there. I don't
Mm.
know. Faintly, it's like moderate, but yeah.
I mean, I do, and like my initial response was a little bit like it was a little weird to me. I mean, especially when like I mean, Jesus like Jez like manifested bread and fish and wine. Like those are what he's known to like make. Like he's never like manifested dessert. Like it's
Yeah,
not like that was
yeah he couldn't even like manifest a cold wine.
yeah, like it
You
was
know?
like we have water right there. So yeah, I could have put it in the fridge, dang it.
Yeah.
It was so like that. So like it feels like again, it was part of her like expectation her like her how do you say dissonance
Right.
between reality versus fantasy. um I will say however that usually that type of striving does propel people forward and like have or that's like what we've I feel like learned in our circle through different books. And I mean I think especially through Meditations on the Tarot, it was like it did talk about that kind of striving towards something, as being like motivation to continue. And I do think that's like a very philosophical thought of like if you are completely content, then like you die and nothing happens.
Yeah, she still
So
has choice.
she still has
Again, it's like that's yeah. And without I mean with if you're completely content, there's no choice in anything. It's like
yeah,
everything is just equal. So
that
there's
is
no
true.
point. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's probably it.
probably it. Well, cool. I'm gonna stop this.